Hello, welcome back to the Pink Floyd Completion Project, and today we are talking about a momentary lapse of reason. And as you can see, we have exited the Wall era because I have changed my shirt. We were stuck in that era for a very long time. Now this is the Floyd's 13th studio album. When a lot of bands hit the double digits of their albums, a lot of people, like, that tends to be like the worst part of their discography. For Pink Floyd, it's different. They made their worst shit as a band. They made their worst stuff in the beginning, which makes sense as well. But the thing is, I genuinely do think that this is a genuinely great album. It's definitely not in my top 5 Floyd albums of all time. But, there's only 15 Floyd albums, so it's definitely in the top 10. It's pretty damn good, I will say. I didn't even need to take notes for this one, if that gives you any indication how much I like this album and how familiar I am with it. So this was, this started life as what was going to be David Gilmour's third solo album, and you can kind of hear that in some of, like, the general sound to the album. It doesn't sound exactly like About Face, but, it's a pretty similar percentage of 80s shit, which, it's not a high percentage. Like, you can definitely, remaster it, and they tried to a couple of years ago. I haven't heard that version. You can definitely remaster some of the 80s-ness out of it, and bring in, some more of that Floydian quality, which they attempted to do on that version that I haven't heard. And we're not going to look at this because I don't really consider that a mainline release. I might do that as like an epilogue piece. But yeah, also the first album cover in a while. The first album cover since Animals to have any involvement from Hypnosis, and the first album cover since Wish You Were Here to be entirely designed by Hypnosis, and it's also the first one since Ummagumma to contain a picture of the Floyd on it in any capacity, even if it's just on the inner gatefold. It's like that on the vinyl as well. So genuinely fantastic. There's also, some personnel differences for additional musicians. I'm gonna try to find it here. Nope, I was on the right page. Jesus. Am I stupid? Oh, I'm looking right at it. Yeah, so there's saxophone parts on this, and as opposed to the standard Floyd saxophonist, or the guy they used on the final cut, it was a fella named Scott Page, who does a fantastic job on all of his songs, I will say. This was also being made while the Floyd was being sued, so it kind of feels like, because once Nick Mason got involved, it was basically confirmed that this was a Floyd album, and then Rick kind of came in later on. So it's just one of those weird things. Rick doesn't really have moments on this album. A lot of keyboards are done by producers and additional musicians. One of those additional musicians would join them on tour, but we'll talk about that personnel in the next video. So, yeah, with all of that background and shit out of the way, let's actually talk about the music on it, starting off with number 1, Signs of Life. It's like a very mellow, very sound effect-y opening to the album. It's kind of like if, like, the first, couple of minutes of Shine On You Crazy Diamond and Speak to Me from Dark Side of the Moon had fused a little bit. That's kind of the energy it gives off, with, a little bit of 80s-ness. They don't smack you upside the head with the 80s-ness. And the next one is Learning to Fly. And if you are unfamiliar with the Floyd, but your parents have tuned to the 80s radio station in your car, you've probably heard this song. The transition out of Signs of Life and into Learning to Fly, it's a bit sudden. It's a bit of a sudden change of energy for me. That being said, it's far from the worst moment on a Floyd album. This isn't Amagama. um, it's like, again, it's a nice 80s pop rock tune, but, with a Floydian flavor. Dave's vocals are pretty good. His guitar work is kinda eh. And the bass on a lot of this album was also played by Dave, or in certain cases, I pretty much the guy who is known for playing bass, Tony Levin of King fucking Crimson and Peter Gabriel. That's cool. That's awesome. I like that greatly. So yeah, like the lyrics to Learning to Fly, they're not that complex. They're literally about David Gilmour learning how to fly an airplane. And Nick Mason joined in on that as well. He also learned how to fly an airplane in the 80s, but it's whatever, a little bit more lyrical tunes, or a little bit more literal lyrics than are typical of a Floyd album, but nonetheless, they're not god awful. Track number 3, The Dogs of War. This is an album where that's a song where it's basically like, hey, there's always gonna be people in power who want war, whether it's this side or that side, and they all make money, So, again, pretty ageless message. It's always going to be that way. There's wars all the time. So, that's basically it. The music's pretty good. Can't really think of a guitar solo moment on it, which, means there probably isn't one. And then you've got One Slip, which begins with a classic Floyd sound cacophony. I don't know why I've coined them that. I just like calling them that. It's sound cacophony. And it's made from a bunch of casino machines. This is the most pop the Floyd ever got. It's got, a bass solo in it, played on a Chapman stick by Tony Levin. So it's a very, very unique sound for a Floyd album. It's definitely a standout moment for this album. It's a musical moment that I think about from it quite frequently. But there's a better version of this song on the live album documenting this tour, which we will get to. Not in this video, but the next one. So yeah, you've got One Slip, which is lyrically it's about a one-night stand which results in a pregnancy. Okay, cool. And then you've got On the Turning Away, which is basically like, hey, there's a lot of folks out there who society has essentially turned its back on, and, I, as, a lower income, country boy, certainly relate to that. Sometimes it feels like, the government or, the world has turned its back on, the rural folk to focus on the urban folk. And it's, it's one of those things that, there's always going to be those communities in the world that are always going to have, people in power who don't have their best interests at heart. But at the same time, it's a very uplifting song with a fucking great guitar solo from David fucking Gilmour. Of course it's a great solo. It's from David fucking Gilmour. And then Yet Another Movie. I don't know what this one's about, but I like it. It's quite enjoyable. There's, a cool guitar moment, and there's, a great sax solo in it as well. And then, Round and Round, it directly transitions into, that should have just been part of Yet Another Movie. That's, like, the only track list change I would make to it. Like, it feels almost convoluted to have, a second, very brief song listed separately. Song 8, A New Machine. It's like an a cappella thing with David Gilmour singing lyrics that I have no fucking clue what they are through a vocoder. It sounds cool. That's it. And then Terminal Frost is this album's signature instrumental. And it's fucking great. Scott Page does a great sax solo, and Dave does, some cool guitar shit. And then A New Machine Part 2 is just more of A New Machine Part 1. And then the closing song, number 11, Sorrow. This is the best song on the album. Period. David Gilmour continues to play it to this day. Let me just tell you something. The guitar intro on this, it's meaty. Like, I listen to it and it's just like, oh, you could take a bite out of it. It's meaty. It's fucking awesome. Oh, it's so good. That da-na, 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 and it just, and then the song, it's, a very instrumental intro, and then, like, almost 2.5 minutes in are the first, vocals, which, the lyrics are, environmentalism. Not, like, okay, it's not as, it's not, like, oh, global warming, it's just like, hey, maybe we shouldn't, be throwing our trash everywhere, maybe we shouldn't be pumping all these fumes into the sky, which, okay, I get, it's basically like, hey, let's preserve the natural beauty of the world. Like, so that I understand. But the guitar solo at the end is so fucking good. Dave and Rick do a couple of harmonies, and it's so fucking good. It's like, this is the moment where I feel Rick actually, like, came in for the recording sessions, because I do feel Rick's presence on this song a little bit. And that is a very loud tractor. Man, that's way down there. You can't see it. It's, but Sorrow's fantastic. I haven't said this in a minute. I'm going to say it. Buy it. Buy it. I genuinely think that. Obviously, this is the first Floyd album with Roger Waters, and I think they did a pretty fucking good job. This album is worth owning for Sorrow alone. It's fantastic. Also, something I forgot to mention, this album cover, the photograph was taken at the same beach that they shot the World War I segments for the Wall movie. Unlike the Wall movie, you're not forced to look at those segments for, most of the movie. You're not forced to look at those segments for most of your experience with this album. It's just, look at the album cover. And it's another very Floydian album cover. I think it, fits in with the rest of their, with the rest of their, visual catalog. It's more visual iconography, and they put all of those beds, and it goes way out into the background there. They put all of those hospital beds on the beach for real. It's awesome. So yeah, go buy it. It's worth having. Next time we're going to be looking at the live album, Delicate Sound of Thunder, specifically the 2019 version, because it's better. It's a better representation of the gigs that they would do. So go buy it. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like on it. If you have something to add, please leave a comment. If you want to continue along this musical journey with me, please feel free to subscribe. If you want to hear me talk about something other than music, I have a podcast called Dorkies with two of my buddies. I will link the most recent episode of that in the description below. And if you want to hear what I happen to be listening to that day, or a 15-second segment at least, you can follow me on Instagram at Sean_Easter1979. I post a 15-second segment of a song on my story there every single day. And yeah, with that, I would like to thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.